Well, I'm Rich Karlgaard, publisher of Forbes, and I'm in Toledo, Ohio today, the global headquarters for SSOE, a architectural and engineering firm that does very sophisticated work with a footprint all around the world in 11 countries. And I'm here with Tony Damon, CEO, and Brad Lowe, the head of HR. And we're going to talk about the challenges of talent at companies like SSOE. You've had, tell us a bit about the history of the company and what you do, Tony.
Well, SSOE was founded 65 years ago here in Toledo, Ohio, and from those kind of humble beginnings, we've grown into really an international architecture, engineering, and construction management firm. Just in the last 7 years, we've nearly doubled the size of the company with our growth and a combination of both organic and acquisition mergers that has resulted in that, and expanded our footprint beyond the Midwest U.S. to include international operations in China and India.
As we're adding people through acquisitions and internal growth, they have to be kind of internalized into the SSOE culture. So how would you describe that?
Definitely the culture is probably the single most important thing for us, which drives our success. You'll hear us say happy staff equals happy clients. So we're in the services industry, so the human capital is very important. And so we focus a lot on not only the right fit for the individual coming into the organization, but taking care of the employees' needs when they're here, because that results in higher productivity and results on the clients, which are saving our clients money.
Well, let's talk about some of the economic challenges of recruiting a first-rate workforce. There's an energy boom going on in the United States, so the competition for talent in many of your spaces is going up. A lot of engineering talent that a generation ago might have gone into engineering and construction and project management goes into Silicon Valley software kinds of things. How do you compete? What's the philosophy for where you want to be in compensation, and if you can't be at the top, then what do you do to compensate for that?
If it's just competing on base compensation, some of the industries, as you mentioned, oil and gas, semiconductor, can probably offer more or higher base salaries. But we try to package that with our benefits program, our career progression model, the variety of work that you get here at SSOE. So you're not in one industry necessarily. You have opportunities to work for many global multinational clients in different industries. So you get a real variety within your career, and the opportunity, as Brad said, to map out your career. We have well-defined career progression ladders in technical, managerial, business development. So every individual that has a desire to move up in their career and even become an owner in the company can see that path and lay it out in their career plan.
We do quite a bit of investment in the employees in terms of development, skills, training, as we have our own learning and organizational development. So we put a lot of emphasis on our employees. So the junior level, the mid-level, they get a lot of that, they get that backing, and then they're susceptible to going and looking elsewhere. So it's in that mid-range. Those mid-level engineers are probably the most critical for us, as well as developing the pipeline of project management skills. Having true project management capabilities to be able to fiscally run a project and drive success on a project is very critical. So we, as we do invest in those skill sets, we do pay particular attention to those individuals, making sure that we're supporting their career objectives, what they're doing, they're trying to do, and really focus on that employee-manager relationship. That's the most critical relationship within our firm, is the direct relationship between the employee and his or her direct manager.
How do you kind of know whether somebody is going to be a cultural fit?
Well, I think we focus a lot on that. One of the things that I've really been working with our managers on is when we're interviewing in a technical capacity, oftentimes firms like ours will focus too much on the technical ability. Mm-hmm. Do you know this building code? Do you know how to crank out this calculation? Have you done this type of design process? Whereas we want to be looking at, is it a right fit? And a lot of times that's me sitting down with the hiring manager and really determining what's a successful profile for you as a manager. Your profile could be different from another manager hiring into a different group. So we focus a little bit on self-reflection of the manager, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones that are ultimately responsible for driving that performance of that individual. And so we're focusing on and making sure that they're comfortable with the selection that they're doing in the recruitment. technical skills can be taught. We have that structure in place. That's not a concern to me. My concern is it the right person on the right seat of the bus for that particular project? And sometimes that project team has people in various different seats of the bus. Using your sports analogy, basketball team has 5 positions. At any one time, you could have a point guard, 2 forwards, and another guard, no center on the team. So we identify what those positions are, and then we construct our project teams to respond accordingly. And it really goes to the manager. And those managers that are really open to that dialogue and the collective intake and taking a look at what is going to be successful for them, how do they want to manage, those are the ones that we have very good hires with. So we focus a lot on that, with the intake and the selection process when we're going through and recruiting candidates.
Well, let's talk about acquisitions, how you acculturate people through an acquisition into the SSOE culture.
Acquisitions and mergers are always very challenging for us in a good way, but we focus on culture. I would say when we look at potential firms to bring into our fold, we look at the culture of the organization, the ownership structure, their philosophy on employees and clients, and that's the first pass. We want to make sure that that's in line with what our culture is. But when we look at those, we do look at, and we actually come through with an acquisition or with a merger, we do spend a lot of time looking at that firm's culture. We look at their best practices. We look at how those could migrate over to ours. Sometimes that is us bringing a lot of structure to the table, which in most cases it is. These firms are on the growing cusp and they're looking for a little bit of more of that structure. We've been there, we've done that, we've cut our chin on some things. But in the same aspect, a lot of these organizations that we're bringing on bring a lot of best practices that we want to evaluate. And so it's a continuous focus on what are the best combination of practices moving forward and integrating the both organizations fully.
Yeah, could I expand on that a little bit? I think culture is extremely important. One of 3 things that we look at when we're considering an acquisition or a merger, and the other 2 are strategy and the financial performance. But back to culture, once we accomplish an acquisition or a merger, we go through a very extensive onboarding process for all the employees, really helping them understand what SSOE is about, their benefits packages, just how to do business within SSOE. So that's an important part, we think, of really quickly integrating the companies, and that's really a pretty serious focus the first 6 months of any acquisition or merger for us.
So with those 3 pillars that would cause you to accept or reject an acquisition, you would reject an acquisition that would make sense strategically and economically if the culture looked like one that could wreck what you've built.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we have disqualified some candidate firms very early on just because we recognized that it would not be a cultural fit.
A CEO once told me one of the dangers about fitting cultures together is that in trying to do the right thing, you have the home company's values and perks and lifestyle things, and then you have the soon-to-be acquired company, and you get this perk creep, where you're trying to bring, this company has free sodas, this company has showers and stuff, so people can go out and run during the day. And how do you do that? How do you bring cultures together in a way that still makes economic sense?
Well, I think part of it is kind of that cultural assessment up front, and I think if we're just too far apart, it's probably not good to go down that road. So we like to think, at least with domestic companies, that we have some good alignment going in, so the changes aren't too extreme. As Brad said, though, they may have some best practices in regards to certain perks or employee benefits that we want to look at adopting. So that's important. Of course, if you go international into a different country, you have to be very sensitive that their culture is going to be different. It's not going to be like the home office, and I think you have to be ready to accept that and work with that. So you want to keep the values, I think, that are important to you, the core values, but you're going to have to be more flexible on some of those other things.
Well, this is fascinating. Tell me then, Tony, what's core and what's flexible in the context of your operations around the globe?
Well, I think some of the core things to us would be respect for the individual, both on our client side and the employee side. Just ethics is very strong throughout our culture, and that can be a challenge, especially in certain foreign countries, as you're probably aware. And just explaining the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, making sure that we're in compliance. That's an ongoing education process to try to explain to our employees in other cultures what's important to us, and just how we do business, and it may be a little different than the way they're used to doing it. So, I think it's some of those values about ethics, work life, how you treat each other, it really makes up the SSOE culture. So.
Well, as you've traveled around the world to your various locations, what are some of the things that you've learned that you've brought back home in the context of talent, corporate culture, and so forth?
I think it's probably caused us to be a little more flexible, a little more open-minded about certain things, and you have to realize that not everything is going to operate like it does in Toledo, Ohio, or Midwest values, or and business still gets done, and the goals are achieved, and that's really the important thing. So if you can do that, keep that in balance with the values of the company, then I think you can be successful. And I think we also have to understand, internationally, what sells here in the U.S. doesn't sell necessarily in other locations. So we have to kind of adjust that, the message and what we're trying to.
For example, just to name two countries, India and China, how would people respond differently, potential recruits?
In China, for example, here in the United States, there's a big emphasis on benefits, fringe benefits, your 401ks, your flex time, these types of things. In China, it's not nearly to the level of importance. It is base salary, base salary, base salary. And so, what in recruiting that does cause a challenge, because think of our industry, we're a services organization, we're a billable organization. So you're driving labor costs up, which affects our billing. And so it's a full circle. You can't have too much overhead, because then you can't be competitive in bidding a project. If you can't be competitive in bidding projects, you're not getting work in to keep your staff busy. So it definitely is a fine balance. We are consistently looking at those from year in and year out. In India, benefits are a little bit more important, but in India also there's a work-life balance. There is a huge draw to career progression in India. Right now, we're just over a year now in India. We acquired a firm in January of 2012. So we've got first 12 months under our belt, and probably the major task that we're at states right now is to clearly define that career progression model in India, and what is that going to need to look like to be successful in the recruitment and retention of employees. So I suspect Mexico is going to be different, and as we continue to grow in other parts of the world, we'll have to really do that enviro scan of what's important in that culture, and then look to bring it into the SSOE environment.
A last question for you, Tony. As manufacturing is about to be profoundly changed, it is undergoing profound change now, but even more profound change with robotics and potentially 3D manufacturing. How do you think about that for the prospects of SSOE, and also for the kinds of talent that you're going to be looking for?
Well, I think, again, it's flexibility and adaptability, recognizing some of those trends and hiring the right types of people that can respond to it. But we've certainly seen, Mexico manufacturing resurgence. We've had a number of projects in the last couple of years down there for a number of different clients in different industries. And we recognize we're going to have boots on the ground there soon as well. To date, we've been able to serve it from the United States, but just the volume of activity that's taking place, that's going to have to change, I think. So I think just being open to all of that and really recognizing what's going on in that marketplace is what's key.